I've always said a farmer prays more than anybody else. He's either praying for it to rain or for it not to rain. And of course, the weather, commodity prices, uh, commodity prices are really way too cheap as far as compared to the cost of production. The net margin on a farm now is very small. It's when I first started farming, if a farmer used $5,000 or $10,000 worth of input cost, he was a fairly large farmer. Now, $1 million and $2 million to put a crop in is not unheard of at all. It's a risky, very risky profession, but it's also gratifying, and it has a lot of pluses.
Mm.
Farming operations have gotten much larger in the last 15 to 20 years just because of equipment's gotten larger, and it's taken more acres to make a living. I grew up on a small farm. We had less than 100 acres in cultivation, but a family could make a decent living on a small farm like that now. Now, most farms around here are probably in the 1,000 to 1,500 acre category, and that would be considered now a family farm. We don't, in this area, I only know of maybe 2 or 3 operations that I would consider industrial type farms. There are not many in this area. With this small community, it definitely impacts the economy of it because it contributes so much to it. From the chemical fertilizer dealers to farm equipment dealers to the buying points at home, peanuts to the cotton gins. And if it's a bad crop year, the local economy really knows it. You can ask the car dealers or anybody what kind of farm you've had, and they pretty well can tell you because it affects them too. A farmer has to know a lot about a lot of things, from mechanical to now technology. Technology is a big part of farming now. It amazes me. I've been retired about 2 years, but we've turned a tractor around at the end and touched the computer, and it drove the tractor back to the other end and didn't even have to touch it. Well, there's been a big argument about who owned that technology. One argument is that I bought the piece of equipment, so I should own the technology since I paid for that piece of equipment. And a tractor now, a normal size tractor now is $250,000, and it always did kind of tick me off. If you call a dealership, you have something wrong with your tractor, they don't call them mechanics anymore. They call them technicians. A technician shows up and he gets out of his truck with a computer. I want him to get out with a hammer and a wrench and go to work on the thing. But the first thing he does is pull out his computer to diagnose what the problem is. And I guess that's good. But it stopped what we all call, refer to as a shade tree mechanic. The older tractors, if you had something wrong with it, if a farmer had just a little bit of mechanical ability, he could probably diagnose the problem and fix it himself. But with this new equipment, if in fact the last tractors I had, if something went wrong with the tractor, that tractor called the dealership and told them what was wrong with it, and they would, somebody would come out and see about it. I might not even know that the compression on the number 2 cylinder was low or something. But that tractor did, and it just called the dealership. Yeah, you knew, if it was serious enough, of course the tractor would tell you to stop and shut it down, which that's what you would do. But if it was a minor problem that could wait, the dealer, they might send somebody out there in a day or two. But if it was a major problem, so somebody show up pretty soon. We've also had tremendous amount of technology in seed development. The BT insect control, now we use so much less pesticide than we used to, which is great for the environment. We were talking the other day, a few guys, in the last 40 to 50 years, we just use the amount of changes has been more than probably in the last 500 years. I guess the change in the equipment and the technology has been the biggest things I've seen and learned. When I was a boy, I can remember when my father farmed with mules, and I remember when he bought his first tractor, and it was about the size of a big lawnmower, I guess. And now, at that time, we called it 2-row equipment. You planted or cultivated 2 rows at a time. And now we're running 12-row equipment, just about everybody around here. So the size of the equipment, the technology in the equipment, technology in the seed, irrigation. We have gone in the last 15 to 20 years from probably 10% of the land was irrigated to, I would guess it exceeds 50% now. I've got all of my land is irrigated with the exception of maybe 10 or 15%. The rest of it, I've got it underwater. It's got so expensive to put a crop in. You got so much money invested that you can't hardly afford to let 3 weeks of dry weather take your whole crop. So we've been forced to put in irrigation. And fortunately, this part of the state, we have the best source of groundwater in the whole southeast, and I think that's what's going to be valuable here in the next 15 to 20 years is our water supply. Well, I had 2 girls, but I had a young man that came to work for me about 4 years ago, and actually he rents all of my farmland, and I think he asks me questions every day, and he's learning, and he's going to be a good farmer. He'll work, and so I mentored him, and most young farmers, they're inquisitive. That's the way they learn. They ask somebody older, and I did the same thing when I was growing up. my daddy always told me, find somebody this you think successful and look up to, and that's who you need to ask questions to. Yeah, basically, yeah. As we older farmers retire, of course, you either sell the land and retire, or just continue to own it and rent it to some of the younger guys, and that's the way it should be. Pass the torch on. I can remember several times a farmer would have tragedy in their family where uh, they were sick or had deaths, and uh, we would all, much of us neighbors, would get together and go harvest his crop for him. It's a real close knit community. Most farming communities are.